he has a waiting list right now with about 30 agencies who are ready to start using this one when it's live. And he's trying to figure out if he should send them regular email updates before the launch, or he just wait until the bugs are ironed out. Basically, how often and when should you engage your waitlist for something like this?
It's a great question. And of course, you know, the rationale you'd want for not over engaging that people like is, well, I don't want to burn them and it's harder to reactivate than to get. The counterpoint to that is that tends to lead people to just not engage. I mean, your default as a founder is not going to be to engage because it's like generally unpleasant and you kind of always know the issues your product has and it will never cease having issues. So, you know, what I would do is I would siphon off maybe 5, 6 of those, and I would tell them ahead of time that, you know, they'll get reduced pricing or just be very nice and kind to you, you know, take a bet on you, you're getting started, you're, you know, whatever. And just tell them you'll be pestering them with a lot of stuff and you can just kind of iterate with them and then maybe, you know, slowly expand that group. I would not get, just going back to the earlier question, particularly worried about, you know, the TAM being small. You know, there's also, I don't know how it would manifest here, but non-consumption can happen, you know, in many different markets. I think it would have been very easy to just assume Uber will become a taxi medallion company, not, you know, the global logistics hub that it is today. So you know, I wouldn't worry about that and I would kind of go for it. Where you would want to kind of worry about like TAM sizing stuff being really small is, I mean, when it's minuscule, when there's literally, you know, 100, $200 million, you know, floating around and it's fragmented, that's kind of tough. The one final thought I should add here, just on the venture financing stuff, I think we all get really affixed in Silicon Valley of building, you know, moonshots, and for the most part, that's great. That's why we have like, you know, Zoom that we're all using now. But there's a lot of great businesses that just do $50 million in revenue every year, and that's kind of it. And I think if you manage to get by with only selling a small share of your company, maybe that's fine. So you may want to think about whether that'd be a fine outcome for you. It's food for thought.
Do you think that sending screenshots, say, here's what I'm thinking about building, what do you think of this, basically actively collecting feedback in that development process helps with conversion? Or do you think it's kind of thing where users will have to just be like, don't bother me?
That's interesting. It's interesting to think of, why is it the case that, you know, this concept of influencers seems to exist throughout society? I mean, from soap opera shows to Instagram, like this stuff seems to really work. And I think it works because people get bought into certain narratives and stories about people. You really like the story, you know, whatever your cup of tea is. Oh, The Rock is working out. That's really great. That's inspiring. And you want more content from that person. Insofar as much as you can become a kind of Instagram influencer to your early users, you know, not in a vanity sense, but in a sense of just like they're really bought into your narrative and the fact that you're working on it, that tends to work really well. That's also a bit of a secret on how to fundraise. If you really have nothing, you can just, you know, profess derivative and just show the rate of change people are making. This works particularly well in one of 2 forms that I recommend. One is, if you're going to do it over email, at least solicit advice, and then you'll have to kind of implement the advice they ask for. If you don't, it just becomes kind of like spam. But it really has to feel like an interactive game for them. Like The Rock is asking you questions from his Instagram feed or what have you. And then the second thing I would recommend that works far better is, instead of badgering people prolifically over email with screenshots, which feels very comfortable to do from the comfort of your home, physically seeing them in person, you know, pandemic permitting, or over Zoom, I think is much better, just because there's much more effervescence built from that than from an email. And I think you actually, although you may fret about it before, in hindsight may enjoy it a bit more after. So 2 approaches that I think could work.